Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everybody is excited for the start of the month of March. Um, yeah, usually this time of year is when most high school seniors are receiving their college financial award letters. Unfortunately, this year with the FAFSA delays and the government dropping the ball, most likely students won't see those award letters until probably mid-April. Um, so you're aware a lot of schools typically do have a May 1st commitment deadline that they basically have to let them know if you're going to be attending in the fall by May 1st. Some schools have pushed that back because of the delays. But at some point in the near future, you will receive a full college financial award letter. So for you families that have seniors, I thought that this would be a good topic of discussion to kind of know what to expect and how to read those award letters, and also walk you through potentially what's called the appeal process, which may be the ability to get financial aid, maybe get a little bit more, almost like a negotiation between schools. But I want to tell you some do's and don'ts and when it's appropriate. Um, for you families that have kids that are younger than seniors in high school, this is also going to be a very valuable lesson because I'm going to share some real examples. I have a student that we worked with for a few years, and she got accepted to numerous schools. But I want to show you what proper planning can do and how it can actually decrease the cost of college because you do the proper planning and you're not positioned, your assets aren't positioned in a way that you could overpay for college. So, very much looking forward to it and explaining a lot of this to you guys. I always love educating the entire college world, especially when it comes to financial aid and any ways that I can help you pay less for college. So, with all that being said, always ask if you like this content, you want to see more, please make sure to like, follow, and share my pages. We're on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, pretty much on everything. Also, I'm a co host of a weekly podcast called College Knowledge, which is a plethora of just diving into information kind of behind the scenes, talking with professors, guidance counselors, um, uh, people in the admissions office, financial aid office at schools all across the country. So, really helps parents get a deeper understanding of what college really is because there's always a lot of questions. If you have questions, feel free to direct message me with any questions you had. If you have a chat that you question you want to put in the chat, I'll happily be able to answer it at the end of today's episode as well. So let's jump in, and here we go. So what you understand is that when you go through the college timeline, you are going to be applying to schools in the fall. Some schools will open their applications as early as August. Um, there are typically three different types of applications, type of how you apply to schools. You can look at what's called regular decision, which usually a school has a deadline sometime in January for applications, essays, letters of recommendation, student transcripts, things like that. There's also another one called rolling admissions. I'm sorry, four, not three. Rolling admissions, a little bit different. They do have deadlines, but essentially what those schools do is as they get the applications, they will make a decision if you're accepted or not. So you can find out pretty early in the process at a lot of schools that if they open their application in August, you might find out in September if you've been accepted to that school. Then there are two early type of applications. One is called early action. The other is called early decision. Early action is a non-binding contract, which simply means you have an earlier deadline. Typically, it's November 1st, but every school is a little bit different. So your essays, applications, everything that's needed has to be in by that November 1st deadline. And if you will find out earlier in the process, typically by the end of December, if you've been accepted, but you're not committed to going to that school, you can still weigh your options of where you're going. The other one is called early decision. Early decision simply means that if they accept you, you have to go there. You're basically committing to the school with that application. And it's extremely important to understand that you're essentially signing on the dotted line without knowing what the actual price of going to that school is. So while it can increase your chances of getting accepted to a school, you might be paying top dollar for that. So depending on your financial situation, may not be the best choice of doing early decision. Um, Outside of the application, there's also financial aid forms. There's two main financial aid forms. The FAFSA typically opens on October 1st. This year it was more like January 1st. And the CSS profile, which about 400 schools use right now. I think more schools are going to use it with all the FAFSA debacle that happened. But that also will open October 1st. And these two forms essentially have to be submitted by deadline. So it could be as early as that, November 1st deadline. It might be later, but it is definitely one of those things you want to make sure that that form is done correctly, accurately, and early, because a lot of schools do give money out on a first come, first served basis. Now, after your applications and financial aid forms have been submitted, you then wait to see if you get accepted. If you are accepted at some point in the future, after that, you'll receive a formal financial aid award letter, and that will dictate line by line item with tuition and fees, room and board. They should have on there out of pocket expenses like books, transportation, and personal expenses as well. It all goes towards their cost of attendance. But some schools do send award letters out with only what they call direct cost, or costs that you are going to be billed by the school directly. This award letter is not a take it or leave it. There are situations where you can appeal the award letter, and basically go back to the school and try and basically make a case that you should be given more money, right, to try to make it more, we'll say, financially feasible. Different reasons why you would do that. I'll go through a couple of them today, but there's also sometimes you don't want to do that, and also go through that today. So let's take a look at a couple of award letters. So again, this is from a family that actually, let me go back a little bit. This was from a family that we were working with. We had the list of schools that we were going to be attending, or at least be applying to, and we ran calculations. And there's a great website that is called collegeplanning.net.com that I invite all of you to visit, because some of the things that you'll see here today, you can actually do if you're a member on that website. So we had 10 schools that we were looking at for this family. And what we did, and let me see if I can make this bigger. You don't need to see me here. So you'll see three columns here. This is what the family basically would be paying if they never met us. This is what the colleges would think that they could afford. It's called your EFC, or now your student aid index, your SAI, or your EFC, expected family contribution. And so that dictates how much need you are eligible for from a college based on their sticker price, their cost of attendance. So this first example is Duquesne. Their cost of attendance, you can see, is about $63,000, almost $64,000. Duquesne would look at their financial picture and say, okay, we think you can afford close to $44,000 a year. Duquesne typically meets 75% of a family's needs. So if they cost 63 and they think the family can afford 43, there's a $20,000 difference between them. They're going to meet on average 75% of that $20,000. And they give that in scholarships, grants, loans, and work studies, different types of aid that does exist. So what that means is that you have to know some of these numbers, because you have to see what schools are potentially really in your budget or not, and you have to avoid the big sticker price. Okay. So when we really look into this, we can see that where they were currently positioned before they met us, or when they first met us, they were going to be asked to pay about $48,000 out of pocket at Duquesne. We then explained to them that if you reposition your assets and you can change the picture on what the colleges see, which is what great financial aid planners like myself will do, that you can actually get that number from 43,000 down to 9,300. Now, when we went through a plan with this family, we realized, okay, we don't want to hide everything that the school can see, but we do want to increase or make the picture look better. So what we came to was a number that we expected to be about 18,418. So at Duquesne, our estimate was to say, yeah, they're going to cost 63,000 as their sticker price, but we anticipate your out-of-pocket cost for that year will be about 30,000. The next school we look at was Susquehanna University. Their sticker price was 72,640. We did an estimate saying it was going to be about $26,000 a year. We then look at Shippensburg. Their cost was about 30,000. We said it was going to be about 24. The Robert Morris University was just over 51,000. We expected that cost to be a little bit north of $25,000 a year. Arcadia costs close to $65,000, and this is from a couple years ago, by the way. And so all these prices are higher now, is basically what I was saying, getting at. Again, we look and say, hey, we think you can afford 18, but they're still going to ask you to pay about $26,000 out of pocket. We looked at St. Joseph's University, St. Joe's in Philadelphia. Their cost was about $67,000. We said, hey, after aid, based on your picture, we think that that price will come in around $27,000. University of Scranton cost about $69,000 a year. We anticipated that cost would be about $33,000. Dickinson, they cost $75,000 a year. We said, hey, that price might be as low as $22,000. Ithaca is about $64,000 a year. We again said probably expect that cost to come in around $22,000. And Loyola University of Maryland, they're about $67,000. We said, all right, we think that they're going to come in at about $24,000. So again, this is using the EFC formula, the student aid index, how the schools typically give money out every year, then taking the family's financial information, putting it into that calculator, and then saying we can improve that number. By improve, you want to lower that number as much as possible. The lower your EFC, the more need that you have. So again, it means that the school is seeing a wider and wider gap. They have to give you more money. So you saw it was pretty impressive that we were able to get that number from over $44,000 down to about $18,000, and that's going to have this family qualify for a lot of more scholarships and grants from the schools. So we moved forward with this plan, and then we got accepted to these schools, and this is what the award letters essentially look like. So the first one that you see here, this is Duquesne. And so this is what an award letter is. And let me walk you through a couple of what you'll typically see in an award letter. Number one, you'll see that it says financial aid, scholarships, and grants. This is money that does not have to be paid back. This is known as gift aid. Okay, so you can see we've got $11,000 or $11,500 Duquesne academic scholarship, totaled $23,000 for the year. So that was $11,500 per semester. Then you see the billable items. So again, these are what's known as direct costs. This is what the school will actually bill you for. So you see tuition is like $45,000, room and board. An estimate is close to $15,000 a year. Then they have their non-billable items. So these are non-direct costs. So books and supplies, personal transportation, and direct loan fees. So they add all of those in, right? But the school won't bill you for all of that. They'll only bill you for the tuition, fees, room, and board. But they basically are saying, okay, it is $63,778 all in. That's their cost of attendance. With the scholarship and grants, we take off the $23,000 of gift aid. We're left with just about $40,000, almost $41,000. Then we have a direct government loan. Okay. So you'll see this family was offered a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. Now, subsidized means that it's a 0% interest loan while the student is a full-time student in school, and the payments won't start until 6 months after graduation. So this family was offered $3,500 of 0% interest loans when they went to school. They also got offered an unsubsidized loan, and that they borrow $2,000 in that portion that will accrue interest. Again, payments aren't due until 6 months after graduation. But if you borrow $2,000 4.5 years later, it's going to be more than $2,000 you have to pay back. The $3,500, the subsidized, will be exactly $3,500 when you have to start paying that back. They also offer here a work study. And again, a work study doesn't actually lower the cost of what you have to pay, whereas the loans do, right? That money comes from the government, goes to the school. Now there's less out of pocket that you have to pay. But the work study is essentially a job that the student get on campus, and the school expects that the money they earn will help pay for part of that cost of attendance, whether it's books, tuitions, some of the expenses that are going on there. So they're saying that we're going to have the student work for about $4,000 a year, and we expect that that $4,000 would go towards college expenses. And then you'll see the last piece, and this is what a lot of people always get confused about, because you'll see there's additional financial aid option for parents, and it's a federal Parent Plus loan. How much is that for? $31,275. And then you see balance after all aid options is $0. Now, if you don't know any better, you might look at that bottom line and say, what's my balance after all financial aid? $0. But what you have to understand there, that Parent Plus, that's a loan that's only in the parent's name. So you'd be borrowing $31,000 a year to attend Duquesne. So really not great, but it's a little deceiving that I've seen schools say like credit-based aid, right? They kind of phrase it differently, and some schools have actually gotten in trouble because of that, because of how they word the plus loan on this award letter. It's a loan. It's a straight loan that the parents have to take out. It's not actually on the student. So what I wanted to also share is this is something else that our clients, when we use the College Planning Network, when we get these awards, we also do a award evaluation. So essentially what we're seeing here is, well, the cost to attend Duquesne is that almost $64,000. The family's expected family contribution was almost $19,000. So the need was about $44,000, almost $45,000. Duquesne has given them $23,000 in a scholarship. They're giving them $5,500 in student loans, and they're also offering the $4,000 work study. So in other words, they are offering a full amount. Even the loan and work study is still considered part of a financial aid package. Okay. So they're offering them $32,500. So in other words, Duquesne offering that $32,500 is meeting 72% of the family's need. Duquesne typically on average meets 75%. So this is not a bad award, but it's also not a great award. It's kind of, I would say it's in line. Okay. And you look at Duquesne and you say, all right, after all the aid that we have, we're going to be paying north of $30,000 a year. If you take the work study out, right, you're actually looking at over $35,000 a year. The next school that we have here is Susquehanna. So I know it's a little hard to see. I apologize. But the basic here was that the tuition, room and board was about $70,000 a year. They were going to be receiving about $45,000 in grants and scholarships, and then have the same situation, a subsidized loan for $3,500, an unsubsidized loan for $2,000. So their total aid was $51,000, meaning that their out-of-pocket costs for only the direct expenses, right, not including books, transportation, and things like that, was actually under 20 grand. So Susquehanna typically meets around 86% of a family's need, and in this student situation, they were getting offered a total package of $54,000 when their need was $51,000. So this student has to look at this and say, yeah, we're getting a lot more money than what they typically offer. This is a great award. And essentially the family's being offered to say, hey, you can come here and we're going to ask you to pay on just about under $20,000 for a school that has the sticker price of $70,000. Okay. Next one, which one is this here? Shippensburg. Shippensburg, the only money that we got here was a $3,000 scholarship, and then the same subsidized and unsubsidized loans for a total of $5,500. Shippensburg is an in-state state school, so you can see they typically only meet 53% of a family's need. Hence, when they only got, $8,500, it seems like the dollar amount is much less, but in reality, it's actually a good award from this school because it's 20% more than what they typically get. So their out-of-pocket cost for this school would be about $22,000. Next up on the list was this Robert Morris, I think is what it was. Yeah, Robert Morris. Again, you see your award letter, you see the scholarship amount, the grants, right? This is all the financial aid it's offered, subsidized loan, unsubsidized loan, and then it gets into the cost of the school as well. So when you see this cost of Robert Morris was about $46,000. The family had about $27,000 of need. Their aid package in total was $25,000. So hence their need, they were getting about 90% of need met. And the school typically meets 79%. Out-of-pocket costs would be just under $22,000 a year. Again, a good award for this family. Next up was, which one's this? Oh, Arcadia. So Arcadia, again, their room and board, tuition fees, about $60,000. And then again, books, transportation, other expenses, another like $3,000 to $4,000 a year. So they were going to get a $25,000 scholarship, a $10,000 grant, subsidized loan for $3,500, unsubsidized loan for $2,000, and a $2,300 work study. So again, Arcadia, they meet about 83%. Again, the family's need was 45. They were getting met about $43,000. Their out-of-pocket cost would be about 21 and change, right? So again, a good award. They are meeting more than what they typically meet, right? This family was getting 94% of their need met when typically the school meets 83. So again, this is another good award. Next up is St. Joe's. St. Joe's, we're looking at total direct costs about $65,000 a year, another $2,300 for those non-direct expenses. We got a $2,500 work study, a $3,500 subsidized loan, $2,000 unsubsidized loan, $25,000 presidential scholarship, $6,000 grant, and also another $3,000 grant. So about $42,000 total in financial aid. So we look at that and say, well, they typically meet 82% of families' need. We got offered 42,000. Our need was 48. So we got about 87% of our need met. Again, not a whole lot to appeal with this. Okay. And I'll get to that in a second. But now we're looking at St. Joe's that cost almost $70,000 a year, being about $25,000 out of pocket. Next one's University of Scranton. So again, we're looking at a Dean Scholarship. We're also looking at a Xavier grant, right? So we're getting some free money of about $40,000. Then we have our subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Then we have the breakdown of the cost, tuition, fees, room and board, right? So their total direct costs was about $66,000. And so this family's out-of-pocket cost would be about $21,000 a year. Scranton typically meets around 71% of families' need, but this family, again, they must really want this student because they were giving them significantly more than that. They were meeting 94% of the family's need. You know, school costs $65,000 a year, but the family's going to be asked to pay about $21,000. Then we get to Dickinson. So Dickinson, you're going to see a very high sticker price here, and here's a perfect example of why you should ignore this altogether. Right, tuition and fees, room and board, over $77,000 a year. But they're going to get a $25,000 a year scholarship, a $35,000 a year grant. So the total grant and scholarships was $60,000. Now that price is down to $17,000 a year. Then they're also going to get a full $5,500 unsubsidized loan. So now the family's out of pocket for direct costs, not including the books and transportation, other, again, those non-direct expenses, is $11,000. So we saw a lot of schools that were in the 20 range. The school that is actually $11,000 out of pocket was the one so far that had the biggest sticker price. Okay. And the reason why is because Dickinson uses the CSS profile. They also meet typically 99% of a family's need. So they looked at their family situation and they said, we think you can afford about $13,000 a year. So we're going to make up almost 100% of the difference and give you that makeup so you come to us, right? Phenomenal package. Absolutely phenomenal, obviously. Next up, we had Ithaca. So this one was a little bit harder to read because it was all just screenshots. But essentially what Ithaca ended up giving this student was a $2,000 scholarship, a $6,000 grant, another $24,000 a year scholarship. So they were getting about $32,000 in aid, getting the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So all in all, this family was being offered about $37,000 a year in financial aid. Ithaca's cost was about $67,000. Now, this is one that potentially an appeal is warranted because you can see that this school typically meets 92% of a family's need, but the school is also now saying that we think you can afford $19,000 a year, but we're going to ask you to pay $37,000, right? So this family only had about 80% of their need being met. I'm sorry, pay about $28,000 versus $18,000. So $10,000 more than what they think you can afford. Ithaca is typically a little bit more giving than that. So this may be a school that we would go back to with an appeal because we can say you typically meet 92% of need. You're only meeting 79% of ours. We think that if you would like us to come, you're going to have to sweeten the pot. Potentially maybe use some of these other awards to leverage and try and get some competition for your student. Lastly, we have Loyola of Maryland. They were receiving a $35,000 scholarship, a $13,000 grant, and the loan. And again, there's the direct charges and how much they're going to have to pay. Well, at Loyola, right, if you can see down the bottom, the balance due is 17,910. Right. So that includes basically the scholarships, the grants, and the loans coming off of that sticker price of about 69,000. So this family, and again, basically he was going to be asked to pay about $20,000 a year to go to Loyola. The cost of attendance, again, north of $72,000 a year. Scholarships and grants is money that never has to be paid back. So $47,000 of it never has to be paid back. 5,500 was that loan that the student has to take out, but it still is less money that has to come out of mom and dad's pocket. So they were getting 97% of their mean net. And again, Loyola typically meets 88%. So a couple takeaways that you have to look at and understand about financial awards is that if you don't have, I usually say like a leg to stand on, and if appeal is not warranted, because I remember this family was discussing if they should appeal that award to Loyola or not. And one of the things you have to know is that when you appeal, you are throwing the first offer off the table. So it's possible that Loyola could have made a mistake when they made that offer. And when they reevaluate your situation, they catch the mistake. And all of a sudden, instead of giving you 97% of your need, they're going to give you less to go back to their normal amount. And this is why you don't want to always appeal every award. You have to know these numbers. And that's where a website like College Planning Network comes into such help, because you can kind of know what historically these schools typically give out in scholarships and grants and what they should cost you. So if you do the calculations and it says, oh, I should be paying $30,000 a year to go to this $80,000 a year school, and you get the award and they're asking you to pay 50, you have a leg to stand on. Something is wrong in that situation. That is one of the big things that you need to understand. There are times that you can appeal. There's other times you can't. You have to know when it is appropriate to do an appeal. You don't just appeal to every single school. Lastly, I put this slide together, and this was basically just a kind of like what each of these schools, what their original sticker price was. And then if we didn't do any type of repositioning, if we didn't do any strategic financial aid planning with the family, what our estimate was that they would have to pay per year at each of these schools. Then we had our estimate after the planning. And again, all can be seen. You can do this on collegeplanningnet.com. You can type in your financial information off your taxes, what your assets are, and build a school list, bookmark schools, and you can see what your estimated out-of-pocket cost is. And there's also another piece on there, like for this family, that first line, Duquesne, estimated $48,000, after planning $29,000. We would show you are in jeopardy of overpaying by $20,000 a year. So to kind of give you what our estimate was before we applied to schools, before we filled out financial aid, we were not that far off on what the actual awards came in. And again, it's an estimate, but it's a really good estimate, and it avoids the sticker price altogether, right? So we thought Duquesne would come in at 29. They came in at 31. We thought Susquehanna would come in at 26. They came in at 19. So that was a pretty good offer. We thought Shippensburg would come in at 23, came in at 22. Robert Morris, we thought would be 25. We were about $3,000 off there. It was about 21. Arcadia, we expected 26. Again, in the right direction, we were right? The family was going to be asked to spend less, about 20,000. St. Joe's wasn't that far off. We said 27,000 a year. Actual cost was about 25. Scranton, we thought would be 33. Little surprise here. Scranton actually came in at 22. Dickinson, we thought would be 22. And obviously a huge shock here to say that cost was actually going to be about 12,000. And again, these are only direct costs that we're looking at. Ithaca, we thought would come in at 22. They were coming in more like 26. And Loyola, we thought would come in at 24. And again, a very good award here. So biggest takeaways that I would like you guys to understand when it comes to award letters. Again, you're only going to get an award letter from a school you're accepted to. You don't want to accept an award letter, right, until you basically compare everything out. Once you accept the award letter, it doesn't mean that you commit to the school. It means you are not going to negotiate or ask for more money. That's accepting the award letter. Committing to the school is sending a non-refundable deposit, saying, I'm coming. Here's my money. I'm coming to you. You don't want to do that too early in the process, because other schools might see that you sent that deposit in and then say, oh, well, we're not going to give you more money, or we were going to accept you, but you committed somewhere else already. We don't need to waste an acceptance on you. We don't have to give you a big package to try and persuade you to come because you've already committed elsewhere. But understand that you should be able to see on your award letter the cost of the school: tuition, fees, room, board, your direct cost. They should have also the indirect costs. That's books, transportation, personal expenses. They will then have your gift aid, your grants, your scholarships. That's free money that never has to be paid back. And then you're offered your self-help options, which are government direct loans and your work study. Anything else that is on an award letter that is not something I just mentioned is most likely a loan that is going to be offered to the parents. Just be aware of that. If you see something that, hey, your net cost after all aid is $0, most likely there's some type of parent loan that is put on there. The other big takeaway that I would have for anybody who has a student that is less younger than a senior in high school right now, this was a perfect example of a family when they came to us. They would have had to pay most likely over $40,000 at every one of these schools because of how they would have been showing their financial picture to the colleges. And when we look at that and say, hey, that repositioning, right, we were able to save this number here, planning savings per year, the second from the right, right? If they went to Duquesne, our strategic maneuvering, I'll say all legal, right? We don't do anything illegal here. But $17,000 at Duquesne, $28,000 at Susquehanna, $8,000 at Shippensburg, $23,000 at Robert Morris, $27,000 at Arcadia, $22,000 at St. Joe's, $28,000 at Scranton, $40,000 at Dickinson, $18,000 at Ithaca, and $28,000. And again, that is per year, right? So a lot of these schools you're potentially seeing, they might have overpaid $100,000 for just one kid's education because of how they were financially positioned, and they didn't meet with a financial aid expert prior to filling out those financial aid forms. So that's what we're always here to educate families on and help guide them to make sure that colleges don't get more of your money, right? Paying less for college can help kids graduate with less debt. It can make payments manageable. It can take schools that parents thought, maybe a dream school that we thought was going to be $80,000 a year, and be the cheapest school on the list, right? You kind of look at that list of schools that we just went through, and there aren't too many schools that are now at a position where the families have to choose a school based on the cost, right? If there were schools on here that were $60,000 a year, you might have to say, you can't go there. We can't afford it. But the fact that they position themselves the right way, like I said, the most expensive school with the most expensive sticker price actually would have been the cheapest out of pocket. Not where the student went, but again, they were able to choose what school was the best social fit and academic fit for them because of the early planning that we were able to help them with to make sure that all the schools on the list were financially a fit. And if we didn't do that planning, those schools would have been substantially, potentially $20,000 per year or more each expensive. And some of those schools would have been not financially a fit. Student may have graduated with more debt than they wanted, or may have even impacted parents' retirement. So I hope you guys found today educational. I hope that you found it worth your time. I do these videos the first and third Friday of every month, but I'm always looking for topics. So if you have questions or you have something that you would like me to do an episode on, please just let me know. Shoot me a direct message, and I would love to do that. Yeah. With that, I don't think I saw any questions come in. I don't even know if the chat box is actually working. But with all that being said, guys, I want to say thank you so much. And please share this information with friends and family, anybody who has college-bound kids. Collegeplaningnet.com is the website that I think is one of the best college search tools out there because of how it brings the academic, the social, and the big one, the financial fit into the picture. College Knowledge. .net, the College Knowledge Podcast. Please take a listen to that as well. And like I said, if you're liking what you're seeing and you like being a little educated, gaining some college knowledge from me, please make sure to like, subscribe, so you're always up to date on all the videos that I post. Until next time, I wish you the best, and I'll see you 2 weeks right before spring break. All the best.